Okay, let's move on to preview next week. Friday night, we have a couple games. Kansas State goes to Oklahoma State. Kansas State favored by 12.5. And Nebraska goes to Illinois. Illinois favored by 3.5. These games do anything for you, Ashton?
I mean, Kansas State's the only team out of there of those four teams that's any good. Like
Yeah.
Nebraska and Illinois aren't good.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State's really bad, like shockingly bad. Kansas State, I think, is a good football team. Like they only had one loss on the road. Missouri hits a 61-yard field goal. That is what it is. I mean, that happens to people. I think Kansas State's a good team. The rest of them are not. Like I don't. Yeah, hopefully that's not offending anyone. Nebraska's in the middle of a rebuild. We don't know what the heck's going on in Stillwater with the Cowboys at Oklahoma State. And Illinois had a good year last year, but like they're replacing a lot, and like they're not very good this year. So yeah, I don't know. There's nothing more than that, I don't think.
Okay, let's move on to Saturday. Maryland goes to Ohio State. Ohio State a 19.5-point favorite.
Yeah.
A kind of an interesting, weird matchup to think about. Obviously, Maryland has put up big points this year, almost seemingly at will. Like they score a lot. They also haven't played a defense anywhere close to Ohio State's level.
Right.
I don't know that we can learn all that much about Maryland. Like if they get killed by Ohio State, I don't know that my opinion of them will change all that much. Or if they keep it close, I won't be all that surprised. I think we can maybe learn a little bit about Ohio State. Like what will they look like against clearly the second best team on their schedule to this point?
Fair. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, Maryland's 5-0. They're undefeated right now. I mean, I think there's a lot of teams out there that aren't, right? They should be ranked. I think Maryland, in at least in my opinion, that's one of the teams that kind of got left off this new AP top 25 ranking. Yeah, I think I agree with that. I will say Maryland has played Ohio State really, really close a couple of times. Even last year was a close game. However, keep in mind, those close games were always in Maryland. That was always at their place. They never have fared well at the Horseshoe, which is where this game will be at. So, like, for that reason, I guess I understand why the line's 20 points. It doesn't really seem like it should be that high when you have two undefeated teams playing each other. But, like, I guess that makes sense then that Maryland has not traveled well to Ohio in previous years.
Okay, LSU at Ole Miss. They just played Ole Miss last week. LSU at Mizzou. Missouri is ranked. LSU still holding on. They're ranked. LSU favored by 6.5 here. Missouri is playing well. They're undefeated. I wish this line was 7, Ashton.
It is like on my sports book. It's 7.
Really?
You can get you can get 7 out there. They're there. They're available.
How do you feel about that?
Is this just the biggest trap game of all time?
Oh.
Like, or am I just losing my mind here? Because we saw LSU not be able to stop a nosebleed on defense. Luther Burden from Missouri is a legitimate NFL wide receiver. Like that guy's going to make a lot of money playing that position professionally. Like he's going to torch LSU from what I've seen. However, like, dude, like this line seems like it's intentionally set too high. Like how many people looked at this line and have watched the LSU Ole Miss game and be like, LSU's going to cover that. They're going to cover a touchdown. Almost everyone has to be on Missouri here, right? This feels like the biggest trap game of all time.
Exactly. This is a theme for me throughout the day. There's several lines that are 6.5. And they all feel like I really would like, it would make so much sense to bet on the underdog. They have the line set at 6.5 because the line makes you think you should bet on the favorite. But man, like these are
Missouri's at home. This is a home dog. Missouri at their place makes zero sense to me.
I think this is a huge stay away for me. I don't know what to expect out of this game. Maybe LSU finds a way to bounce back and play to their potential, but we haven't seen it a whole lot this year. So, all right, the Red River Shootout, Oklahoma and Texas. Texas favored by 6.5.
Yeah,
we have seen them really not struggle a whole lot this year, like we're kind of used to. Oklahoma has put
Right.
up big points in most of their games. They haven't always played totally to their potential.
Right.
Is this the game where Texas finally falls back to earth? Do you expect Oklahoma to? I'll preface it by saying this: we have seen this game be absolutely bonkers both ways. Like almost anything can happen in this game historically.
Yes.
Including
right.
Texas just absolutely demolishing Oklahoma, like last year, where Oklahoma had the quarterback injury.
Correct.
Dylan Gabriel's here this year. They got Jackson Arnold to back him up. So you feel better about Oklahoma from that standpoint. But yeah, this is a lot of rambling. Ashton, who wins this game and by how much?
No clue on who actually wins this game. I will say the line, which on my book, Texas -7, is wildly high. That is too high for this game. This game's, you just said it, it's an unpredictable game. Oklahoma is a good football team. Oklahoma is one of 4 teams that are undefeated against the spread, not just straight up against the spread. Oklahoma has come out and every time covered their point spread. 7 points feels really high. It's a neutral site. Like there's nothing to be gained there. We've seen Oklahoma play well there in the past, very recently. We've seen Texas, obviously, last year, just a blowout there. You mentioned this is going to be a close game. Like I think that this is going to be a really competitive game. It would not surprise me at all if Oklahoma comes out and beats Texas. Is it likely? Is it more likely? Probably not. I mean, I think Texas should be the favorite, but not 7 points the favorite. Like that's too high. Like this needs to be a field goal game either way. Texas could absolutely blow them out. That's possible, but I think it's far more likely that this one's close. I really think that this one will be a close game. I probably already tipped my hand. I like Oklahoma to cover the 7 points. I think it's close. Like I think this is a coin flip game.
All right, Washington State goes to UCLA. UCLA favored by 3.5. Washington State, obviously, they're still undefeated, doing good things. Big win a week ago against Oregon State. Yeah, I was interested by this line, but I also can't necessarily disagree with it. This would basically insinuate that it's roughly even on a neutral field. I don't know if I completely agree, but I also don't know that I can completely disagree.
I don't have much for you there. Like yes and no. I mean, the last time we saw like these teams. Okay, think about the last time we saw UCLA, right? Like that was a disaster that happened to them at Rice Eccles, right? Like against Utah, not able to move the ball at all. They're 3-1. They yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a lean on here. Are you betting this game?
No,
by any chance?
Absolutely not. I think that Washington State clearly doesn't have as good of a defense as Utah. So I expect Utah to be able to UCLA, to score some points in this game. I also think Washington State is going to score some points. There's so much variance in this game. I don't know what to expect.
Washington State's one of those teams, like they're up to number 13 now, and they're obviously undefeated. And they've had a great win. That Oregon State win is huge for them. But they're getting, I'll just say they're getting dangerously close to being that team that has won a couple of games and gets overinflated and then has to play a really good team and just gets absolutely crunched. You know what I'm talking about? Like we had a couple of years back, Iowa was all the way up to number 2 in the AP poll. Everyone knew that Iowa wasn't the second best team, but somehow they got up there, right? Like due to resume. And like at some point, water does find its level there. And maybe this is that game that it happens for Washington State. But Washington State's a good team, like not disrespecting them at all, but UCLA is far more talented. I think that like objectively, UCLA has more talent there. They have a veteran coach who you trust a lot. Like I just think on the road for Washington State, I think this is a tough game. It's also on the Pac-12 network, which I don't get. And I probably won't be able. They've put a lot of games on the Pac-12 network, like the last 2 years. Too many. I can't watch it. Like I don't have it. I don't even know if I can get it. So yeah, that's frustrating. You just can't watch good football games.
That's the only good thing about the Pac-12 splintering apart. That's right. Yeah. The only good thing that could come out of that. Wake Forest goes to Clemson. Clemson, a 3-touchdown favorite. Wake Forest has been spicy with them in previous years. Not quite as good this year, we don't think, but still solid. Any thoughts in this game?
I mean, Clemson should be favored by 21, in my opinion.
Sure.
Like, I think that's about an appropriate line.
Yeah. Virginia Tech goes to Florida State. Big helmet matchup, if nothing else. Florida State favored by 24. Tech coming off a big win, like their only impressive win of the season so far. Florida State, who knows what could happen there? Obviously, they've had some up and down, but I think we're going to see them probably beat Virginia Tech by 24 points. Roughly.
Florida State this year is kind of what Texas was in previous years. You can play really, really good against a good team, and then somehow you play down to your competition the next week. Florida State should have lost to Boston College. Like, they should have lost that game if Boston College doesn't have 25 penalties. Let's just hope that's not happening. At least it's a home game for them. It's in Doak Campbell Stadium. But, I mean, they've been beat there in recent years by teams that are not good. So, yeah, I think it's hopefully it's not a game that we'll be tuning into in the fourth quarter just because, Virginia Tech has a 3-point lead. you know what I'm saying? That, like, you can absolutely see that happen. Maybe this is something Florida State can avoid.
Right. All right, Syracuse goes to North Carolina. Syracuse got their first loss of the season last week against Clemson.
Yeah.
A second straight week of playing a really tough ACC opponent. North Carolina favored by 8.5. North Carolina sneakily having a really good season. They're ranked number 14. Any chance Syracuse can upset them on the road?
I'm leaning no, but, like, it is North Carolina. North Carolina also coming off a bye. Like, it really feels that they'll be ready here. Syracuse coming off. I mean, Clemson is a big game for Syracuse. That was an emotional game for them at home. That's always been a big game for Syracuse. I mean, this dates back to, way back when they actually knocked off Clemson a couple of years back. Like, Syracuse gets up for Clemson, I guess is what I'm saying. I think it's just hard to get up for big games back to back. This one's on the road going to North Carolina. North Carolina coming off a bye. Everything's pointing North Carolina here. I would kind of lean North Carolina to win and cover in this one.
Gotcha. Purdue goes to Iowa. Iowa favored by 2.5.
Yeah.
This is the type of game where you just, unless you're just a ridiculous, if you're addicted to gambling, you can go ahead and gamble on this game. If you're not, I would strongly suggest you don't. Maybe you disagree, Ashton. I just don't know what to expect out of these two teams.
That line's really low. Iowa only favored by 2.5.
You're right.
Purdue's 2-3 on the year. I know they hammered Illinois last week. They put up 44 points, something that Iowa could only dream of doing.
Exactly.
Iowa's actually 4-1. For as much fun as we make of Iowa, and granted they don't put up points. I mean, yeah, they don't. Iowa's 4-1. Like, they're not a bad team. If they beat Purdue this week, they go to Wisconsin next week and then home for Minnesota. Then it's Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, Nebraska. Like, they could win these games. They could have an absolutely atrocious offense and be 10-2 this year easily. Like, that could very easily happen. So, yeah, I don't bet it. Please don't. Don't bet this game. It's if you enjoy bad football, like yeah, you could tune into this. It is on Peacock too. Like, it's on Peacock, which, like, it's also tough. Like, I don't always get that either. I don't get any of it. So yeah, another one of these games. What's up with all these weird networks, man? Like, that really, it kind of affects my viewing on Saturdays.
That's from the Big Ten's deal with NBC.
I know.
So there's about one game a week that's on Peacock and the Big Ten that you just can't watch. So yeah, it's annoying. I'm thanking God for little brothers that have Peacock and share their login with me. So that works.
Nice. I like that.
Alabama plays Texas A&M at Texas A&M. Bama favored by 2.5 on the road here.
Yep.
Feels like Alabama is more than a field goal better than A&M, but we know A&M always gets up for this game. Jimbo always brings it for Alabama for some reason. We talked about it earlier. Bobby Petrino has been at least a good hire. We can at least say that. Like, their offense has been solid this year.
Right.
And Bama has not exactly been consistent. Like, we can't say they've been anything but inconsistent this season.
Sure.
So all of that said, do you have any expectations, or is this a game you're just watching and enjoying?
Definitely a game to watch and enjoy. This has been a close game for the last number of years. Like, this game has been competitive for a long time. It's not just, the last 2 years. A&M's good. A&M's a good football team. They had that bad loss to Miami. They've rebounded since then, 2-0 in the SEC. Alabama also had a bad loss. They're also 2-0 in the SEC. The line, I think the line is correct. I wouldn't want the line to be any more on Alabama. Like, this is a home game. Are you kidding? The last 2 years, it's come down to just the last play, like literally the last play of the game.
Yeah.
Has this rivalry. So yeah, I think the line's appropriate. Like, I'm not betting either side of it. I think it's a great line. Like, that's kind of what I have to say. I'm just going to be sitting there watching. I think it's going to be entertaining. I think it'll be close. I think this will be a really close game.
There's a lot of really great lines this week. Like, going through it, there's a few that I found, okay, I think I see some value here, but then there's a lot that I just, not touching that. So don't disagree with you at all. Vanderbilt goes to Florida. Florida favored by 18.5, both feeling a little disappointed at this point. Vanderbilt for the season, Florida for last week. UCF goes to Kansas. Kansas favored by 2. Kind of a sneaky fun matchup there on Fox at 2 o'clock. Oh, sorry, 4 o'clock Eastern. Sorry, I'm in Mountain Time, so I see my times. Colorado goes to Arizona State. Colorado favored by 4. 7 o'clock.
Oh.
You got something to say about that?
4 points. Colorado's favored by 4. What are we doing? Dude, Colorado was so overhyped just 2 weeks ago. And so now suddenly they have a couple bad losses. Arizona State's not any good. No. Arizona State is not any good. I know the game's in Tempe, and Colorado has to travel. Colorado is so much better than 4 points against Arizona State. That has to be a trap. Like, that almost is so trappy that it makes me think that, like, Vegas knows something and Arizona State's the side that we need to be betting there. 91%, that one stuck out like a sore thumb.
91% of public money is on Colorado. That's terrifying.
So scary. So scary. When has 91% of the public been right about anything ever?
Exactly. At 7 o'clock on ESPN, we have Kentucky, undefeated Kentucky, going to undefeated Georgia. 2 of the 3 undefeated teams in the SEC playing each other here. Georgia favored by 14.5. This game has been a little weird in recent years. Georgia feels like clearly the superior team, and they are. We expect them to win this game. Kentucky also, like, they showed out last week against Florida, and Georgia they've kind of been cruising along and playing their B- game for a while. Like, is there any chance? Are you worried at all as a Georgia fan, Ashton?
Okay, so if you watched last week's games, you saw Kentucky be super physical, like, on the offensive line, right? And they pushed around what was a good Florida team. Florida has a good front seven. They really do. They're not weak there. And Kentucky pushed them around. You saw Georgia get pushed around by Auburn up front. I think Florida is Kentucky's Super Bowl. Like, I think Kentucky, they go after that Florida game. I don't think Kentucky thinks that they can beat Georgia.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to go on the road to Athens and replicate that performance. I do. Like, if you don't be a slave to what you just saw last week. Like, I think that's kind of what I have to keep coming back to. I think it's far more likely that Georgia gets up early and gets after Kentucky and wins by 4 scores than Kentucky keeping this one within a field goal, like with what we would have seen last week. So I'm not betting it. The line is good. 14.5. Mm-hmm. You can't get in there under 2 touchdowns. So you kind of always have that backdoor, ability. I think the game will be slow. I think Kentucky will run the ball. Georgia's not playing with any sort of tempo this year on offense at all. Very frustrating. And so they're also very slow. I think, I think the line's about right. I think Georgia probably comes out and cruises in this one and just kind of sits on Kentucky. I think that's a fairly likely outcome.
I think these coaches are not stupid. They know which games they can win, which games they can lose.
Yeah.
I would expect Kentucky to play not to get blown out. And that probably results in about a 2-touchdown loss.
Yeah.
And I would guess come the second half, both coaches are most likely content to just kind of sim to end. Like, just get out of the game. Nobody gets hurt. Georgia gets a comfortable 2-score win, and we all get to move on to the next week.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah. Don't disagree at all. Yeah, I think that's pretty likely.
All right. somewhat of an unlikely ranked matchup. Notre Dame goes to Louisville. Louisville sneaking into the rankings this week, undefeated. Notre Dame favored by 6.5 on the road here. It's their third consecutive night game against an undefeated team, and it's going to be 4 next week when they play USC. I have some thoughts here, but what are your thoughts as someone who has somewhat followed Notre Dame at least, and maybe to a lesser extent Louisville this season?
Louisville to a much lesser extent, but like Louisville's schedule has not been very difficult. Like they had the teams that they've beaten have not been impressive since then. Louisville's 5-0, and that's fantastic, and you're ranked now, and good for them. But like I think Maryland's a better undefeated team than Louisville. I think Clemson certainly would beat Louisville head to head right now. I know Clemson's had a couple of losses. Louisville is there, in my opinion, due to a fairly weak schedule. I think Notre Dame is significantly the better team. I do know that you have to go on the road, but this is closer to home for you. Yeah, I think Notre Dame wins. I think Notre Dame covers.
You kind of took the words out of my mouth. I feel like Louisville is not actually all that good. I mean, they're good. They're not the 25th best team in the country.
Right.
If Notre Dame plays their B game, they should easily cover. Like they have no excuse. This is not Duke even. Like Louisville's not even as good as Duke. And I could make a pretty good argument Notre Dame didn't even play their B game against Duke. So,
right.
Yeah, I'll probably have more on this later, which is terrifying as a Notre Dame fan. But Michigan plays Minnesota. Michigan favored by 19.5. They continue their roll through the Big Ten until they play anybody good. I would expect them to kind of do the same thing they've done all season and win this game comfortably. Any disagreement from you, Ashton?
No, not at all.
All right. Fun matchup on the SEC Network at 7:30 Saturday night. We have Arkansas and Ole Miss playing. This could be more fun. Like I'm a little bummed out for Arkansas, but I'm just going to enjoy this game for what it is. Like two pretty solid football teams that tend to play weird games against each other. Ole Miss favored by 11.
True.
Yeah. Any chance Arkansas can get off the mat after some disappointing games in September? Can they get going in October against probably a better Ole Miss team, although not significantly so, I would argue?
It would be the most Ole Miss thing of all time to go out and beat LSU and have a signature win for your program, and then the next week at home lose to Arkansas. Yeah. Like, that's very Ole Miss. That's very Lane Kiffin. Like, that's extremely Lane Kiffin to do. So, yeah, no, it's watch the game. It's going to be entertaining. I think, Arkansas could win this. You want to sprinkle a couple of bucks on Arkansas money line just to win outright? I don't hate that at all. Not at all.
Yeah. All right, just kind of wrapping up the evening's games. Georgia Tech goes to Miami. Miami favored by 21. Texas Tech goes to Baylor. That one is roughly a pick 'em. Varies a little bit depending where you look. TCU goes to Iowa State. Iowa State, a 6.5-point underdog at home there. Let's see. We have Oregon State going to Cal. Oregon State favored by 9.5. And then the evening ends with Arizona going to USC. USC favored by 21.5.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on those games before we move on to selecting our 5 to watch for the week?
No, not really.